Chitty Chitty Bang Bang by Sir Ian Fleming. Forward. These stories are affectionately dedicated to the memory of the original Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, built in 1920 by Count Zborowski on his estate near Canterbury. She had a pre-1914 war chain-drive 75 horsepower Mercedes chassis, in which was installed a 6-cylinder Maybach aero engine, the military type used by the Germans in the Zeppelins. 4 vertical overhead valves per cylinder were operated by exposed pushrods and rockers from a camshaft on each side of the crankcase, and 2 Zenith carburetors were attached, one at each end of a long induction pipe. She had a grey steel body with an immense polished bonnet, 8 feet in length, and weighed over 5 tons. In 1921, she won the 100-mile-an-hour short handicap at Brooklands at 101 miles per hour, and in 1922, again at Brooklands, the lightning short handicap. But in that year, she was involved in an accident, and the Count never raced her again. Chapter 1. Crackpots. Most motor cars are conglomerations. This is a long word for bundles of steel and wire and rubber and plastic, and electricity and oil and petrol and water, and the toffee papers you pushed down the crack in the back seat last Sunday. Smoke comes out the back of them, and horn squawks out the front, and they have white lights like big eyes in front, and red lights behind. And that's about that. Just motor cars, tin boxes on wheels for running about in. But some motor cars, mine for instance, and perhaps yours, are different. If you get to like them and understand them, if you are kind to them and don't scratch their paint or bang their doors, if you fill them up and top them up and pump them up until they need it, if you keep them clean and polished and out of the rain and snow as much as possible, you may find, that they become almost like persons, more than just ordinary persons, magical persons. You don't believe me? All right then. You just listen to what I'm going to tell you about this car. I believe you can guess the name already. Her name, I should say. And then see if you don't agree with me. All motor cars aren't just conglomerations of machinery and fuel. Some are much, much more. Once upon a time, there was a family called Pott. There was the father, who'd been in the Royal Navy, Commander Caractus Pott. You may think that Caractus sounds quite a funny name, but in fact the original Caractus was a British chieftain who was a sort of Robin Hood in AD 48 and led an English army against Roman invaders. I expect since then there have been plenty of other Caractuses, but I don't know anything about them. And then there was the mother, Mimsy Pott, and a pair of 8-year-old twins, Jeremy, who was a black-haired boy, and Jemima, who was a golden-haired girl, and they lived in a wood beside a big lake with an island in the middle. On the other side of the lake, M20, the big motorway on the Dover Road, swept away towards the sea. So they had the best of both worlds, lovely woods for catching beetles and finding birds' eggs, with a lake for newts and tadpoles, and a fine big motor road close by, so they could go off and see the world if they wanted to. Well, almost, that is. But the truth of the matter was that they hadn't got enough money between them to buy a car. All the money they had went on necessities, food and heat and light and clothes, and all those boring things that one doesn't really notice but families have to have. There was only a little left over for birthday and Easter and Christmas presents and occasional surprise outings, the things that really matter. But the Potts were a happy family who all enjoyed their lives, and since they weren't in the least sorry for themselves, or sorry they hadn't got a motor car to go whirling about in, we needn't be sorry for them either. Now, Commander Caractus Pott was an explorer and an inventor, and that may have been the reason why the Pott family was not very rich. Exploring places and inventing things can be very exciting indeed, but it is only very seldom that in your explorations you discover a really rare butterfly or animal or insect or mineral or plant that people pay money to see, and practically never that you discover real treasure like in books, gold bars and diamonds and jewels in an old oak chest. As for inventions, much the same troubles apply. People all over the world, in America, Russia, China, Japan, let alone England and Scotland and Wales and Ireland, are inventing or trying to invent things all the time. Every kind of thing, from rockets to fly to the moon, to ways of making India rubber balls bounce higher. Everything is being invented or improved all the time by somebody somewhere, whether by teams of scientists in huge factories and laboratories or by lonely men, sitting and just thinking in tiny workshops without many tools. Just such a solitary inventor was Commander Caractus Pott, and I am ashamed to say that because he was always dreaming of impossible inventions and adventures and explorations in the remotest parts of the earth, he was generally known in the neighbourhood as Commander Crackpot. You may think that's cheek, and so it is, but Commander Pott was a humorous man, and he knew his own shortcomings very, very well. So when he heard that was his nickname in the neighbourhood, he wasn't at all cross. He just roared with laughter and said, "I'll show 'em," and disappeared into his workshop and didn't come out for a whole day and night. During that time, smoke came out of the workshop chimney, and there were a lot of delicious smells, and when the children put their ears to the locked door, they could hear mysterious bubblings and cooking poppings, if you know what I mean, but nothing else at all. When Commander Pott came out, he was so hungry that first of all he ate 4 fried eggs and bacon and drank a huge pot of coffee. And then he asked Mimsy to call Jeremy and Jemima, who were getting in an awful mess digging out a water rat's hole in the bank of the lake. They never caught the water rat. He dug down faster than they did. The twins came and stood side by side looking at their father, wondering what this invention had been this time. Commander Pott's inventions were sometimes dull things like collapsible coat hangers, sometimes useless things like edible gramophone records, and sometimes clever things that just wouldn't work, like cubicle potatoes. Easy to slice and pack and peel, but expensive to grow, each in its own little iron box, and so on. Commander Pott, looking very mysterious, dug in his pockets and produced a handful of what looked like round, coloured sugar sweets, each a bit bigger than a marble wrapped in paper, and still looking mysterious, he chose a red one for Jeremy and a green one for Jemima and handed them over. Well, sweets are always sweets, thought the children, even though they don't look very exciting, so they unwrapped them and were just about to pop them into their mouths when Commander Pott cried, Wait, look at them first, very, very carefully." The children looked at the sweets and Commander Pott said, "What do you see? What's different about them?" And Jeremy and Jemima said with one voice, or almost, "They've got 2 small holes drilled through the middle of them." Commander Pott nodded solemnly. "Now suck them." So Jeremy and Jemima popped the sweets into their mouths and sucked busily away, looking at each other with raised eyebrows, as much to say, "What do you notice? And what do you taste? Mine tastes of strawberry, mine tastes of peppermint." And both pairs of eyes seemed to say, "They're just sweets, round boiled sweets, and our tongues can feel the holes in them. Otherwise they're just like any other sweets." But Commander Pott, who could easily see what they were thinking, suddenly held up his hand. "Now stop sucking, both of you. Twiddle the sweets around with your tongues until they're held between your teeth, with the twin holes pointing outwards. Open your lips and blow." Well, of course, the children laughed so much watching each other's faces that they nearly swallowed the sweets. But finally, by turning their backs on each other, they managed to compose themselves and fix the sweets between their teeth. And then they blew. And you know what? A wonderful shrill whistle came out, almost like a toy steam engine. The children were so excited, they went on whistling until Commander Pott sternly told them to stop. He held up his hand. "Now go on sucking till I tell you to whistle again." And he took out his watch and carefully observed the minute hand. "Now!" This time, Jeremy and Jemima didn't laugh so much, but managed to get their sweets, which of course were much smaller than before, between their teeth, and they blew like billy-o. This time, because their sucking had hollowed out the holes still more, the whistle was a deep one, like one of the new diesel trains going into a tunnel, and they found they could play all sorts of tricks, like changing the tone by blocking up one hole with their tongues and half closing their lips so as to make a buzzing whistle, and lots of other variations. But then, what with their sucking and their blowing, the bit between the 2 holes collapsed and the sweets made one last deep hoot and then crunched, as all sweets do in the end, into little bits. Jeremy and Jemima both jumped up and down with excitement at Commander Pott's invention and begged for more. Then Commander Pott gave them each a little bag full of sweets and told them to go out in the garden and practice every whistling tune they could think up, as after lunch he was going to take them to Scrumptious Limited, the big sweet people at the local town, to give a demonstration to Lord Scrumptious, who owned the factory. And as they ran out into the garden, Commander Pott called after them, "They're called Crackpots, Crackpot whistling sweets, and you know what, my chickabiddies? They're going to buy us a motor car." But the children were already dancing away into the woods, making every kind of whistle you can think of, at the same time sucking like mad at their delicious sweets. There really seemed to be something special about Commander Pott's invention, just a little touch of genius. Well, anyway, I can tell you this. Lord Scrumptious thought so. After he'd heard Jeremy and Jemima whistling in his office, he sent them out into the factory, and they danced around among the workers, sucking and whistling and handing out sweets from their packets, so that very soon they had all the workers in the factory sucking and whistling, and everyone laughed so much that all the Scrumptious sweet machines came to a stop. Lord Scrumptious had to call Jeremy and Jemima away before they brought the whole production of Scrumptious sweets and chocolates to a grinding halt. So Jeremy and Jemima went back into Lord Scrumptious's grand office, and there was their father being paid £1,000 by the Scrumpshire Company treasurer, and signing a paper which said he would get an additional 1 6pence in every 1,000 crackpot whistling sweets sold by Scrumptious Limited. Jeremy and Jemima didn't think that sounded very much. But when I let you into a secret and tell you that Scrumptious Limited sell 5 million every year of just one of their sweets called Chock-a-Hoop, you can work out for yourselves that perhaps, just perhaps, Commander Caractus Pott wasn't making such a bad bargain after all. So then everyone shook hands, and Lord Scrumptious gave Jeremy and Jemima each a big free box of samples of all the sweets he made. The 3 of them hurried off back to Mimsy to tell the good news, and straight away the whole family hired a taxi and went to the bank to deposit the cheque for £1,000, and then they went off together to buy a car.